Right now, while most of the world is scrolling through real estate listings and comparing airfares and wondering whether to move to a bigger city or a smaller one, there is a village in the South Atlantic where the question of how to live was answered a long time ago. And the answer was, like this: one settlement, one harbor, one school, one church, one hall where the whole community can sit together, cliffs behind, ocean ahead, and a way of life that the rest of the world abandoned so gradually that most people forgot it was ever a choice. This is Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, the only settlement on Tristan da Cunha, described by the island's own official website as the world's most isolated settlement. All resident islanders live here, in a single village on the north coast, beneath cliffs that rise roughly 800 meters above them. Tristan da Cunha Settlement. And if you look at it from above, you might not immediately understand what makes this place extraordinary. It looks small. Scattered houses, green patches, a few roads, a narrow shore. Nothing that screams importance. But what makes Tristan extraordinary is not what it built. It is what it refused to become. Because in a century where nearly every beautiful, remote place on Earth has been opened, developed, sold, branded, speculated on, and turned into someone else's investment opportunity, this village said no. Not once, not accidentally, repeatedly, deliberately, across generations. And the shape of that refusal is still visible in almost everything about how life works here. Start with the land. In most of the modern world, land is a commodity. You buy it, you sell it, you profit from it, you develop it, you borrow against it, you compete for it, you accumulate it. And eventually, in most places, the people who were there first get priced out by the people who arrived with more money. Tristan said no to that. The island's official economy page states it plainly. All land is communally owned. Stock numbers are strictly controlled to both conserve pasture and to prevent better-off families accumulating wealth. And, this is the line that matters most, no outsiders are allowed to buy land or settle on Tristan. Despite, it notes, many applications to join a society referred to as utopia. Economy. Read that again. People have applied to move here. People have heard about this community and thought, that is how life should work. And Tristan said no. Not because the islanders are cruel. Not because they are suspicious of strangers. Because they understood something most places learn too late. Once you open land to outside ownership, the community that lives on it eventually stops being the point. The land becomes the point. The price becomes the point. And the people who shaped the culture become tenants inside their own home. Tristan did not allow that. And in doing so, it preserved something the modern world has almost entirely lost. A place where community comes before market. Now think about what that means in practice. Tristan's economy is still built on subsistence farming and fishing for local food. Foreign income comes from the commercial Tristan rock lobster industry, stamps, coins, handicrafts, and limited tourism. Every family is involved in farming. Adults combine salaried government work with fishing, repairs, building, domestic service, and helping neighbors. Children and pensioners participate too. Economy. That is not a quaint lifestyle brochure. That is a working social system. A system where labor is visible, where food is connected to effort, where building a house is not a financial transaction. It is something done with your own hands, or with the help of neighbors. Where a man might work a government job, fish in good weather, repair his own home, help fix a neighbor's roof, and take his family to gather food on a nearby island, all in the same stretch of days. Where women hold government roles, process crawfish, manage homes, and have historically served as chief islander and head of school. Economy. That kind of life does not survive by accident. It survives because the community kept choosing it, over and over, even when easier alternatives were available, even when the modern world knocked on the door and said, "Wouldn't you rather have this instead?" And that leads to the most dramatic proof of what Tristan's refusal really means. In 1961, a volcanic eruption forced the evacuation of the entire community. The earth shook. The ground rose behind the settlement. A new volcanic cone formed. Lava destroyed the factory and both landing beaches. And 264 islanders, along with 31 expatriates, had to leave. They were taken first to Cape Town, then to England. The British government assumed the move was permanent. The official Tristan history page is blunt about this. The UK government expected the islanders to stay. After all, there had been multiple crises in the island's history, where officials had argued the settlement should be abandoned. Surely a volcanic eruption, with lava destroying critical infrastructure and wild dogs savaging livestock and unknown visitors ransacking empty homes, would be the end. Especially when the islanders could be given jobs, schools, housing, and a place in the booming consumer society of early 1960s Britain. 1961 to 1963, volcanic interlude. Think about that. These people were handed modern England, jobs, schools, shops, healthcare, roads, convenience, entertainment. Everything the modern world tells you that you need. And what did they do? They voted to go home. The official history records the ballot, 148 to 5 in favor of returning. Not even close. And the island's own account of the resettlement uses a phrase that tells you everything. The community returned to their volcano-ravaged settlement, rejecting the booming consumer society of England's swinging 60s. 1961 to 1963, volcanic interlude. That is not nostalgia. That is a civilizational decision made by ordinary people. Fishermen, farmers, mothers, children, elders, people who had seen what the modern world looked like from the inside and still chose home. Not because they were ignorant, because they were clear. Clear about what mattered, clear about what kind of life they wanted, clear about what they were willing to lose and what they were not. And they came back to a place that had been damaged by eruption, neglected for months, and declared uninhabitable by officials who assumed bigger always meant better. They rebuilt. They stayed. They continued. That single act may be the most powerful refusal of the modern world by any small community in the 20th century. And it was not done with speeches or manifestos. It was done with a vote and a ship and the willingness to go back to hard work. Now think about what they returned to. Not luxury, not ease, a village with no airport, a harbor too small for ships to dock. Passengers and cargo must be ferried ashore on motorized rafts. Shipping, a journey from Cape Town that takes about 6 days by sea. Ships that carry only up to 12 passengers. Landings that depend on weather. Travel that can be delayed, canceled, or bumped by medical emergencies. Shipping, visits that require approval from the administrator's office and island council. A population, as of 2026, of just 221 resident islanders. Family news. 221. That is not a town. That is barely a single floor of a city apartment block. That is small enough that every person is known. Every surname carries history. Every absence is felt. Every birth matters. Every departure hurts. Every return is an event. The settlement page notes that present residents descend from original settlers, with only 7 family surnames surviving among current islanders: Glass, Swain, Green, Rogers, Hagen, Repetto, Lavarello. Each name is linked to a specific founder, a specific year of arrival, a specific nationality. Settlement. That is not genealogy as a hobby. That is identity as geography. These families are the village. The village is these families. And preserving the village means preserving the families, means preserving the system that holds them together. Which brings us back to the refusal. Because what Tristan said no to is not technology. The island has electricity, water systems, a hospital, a school with 5 classrooms, a library, a hall, a computer suite, and rooms for craft and science. Children are educated from ages 3 to 16. School. There are shops, government services, administrative offices, communication systems, a fishing industry connected to international markets. This is not a community pretending the 20th century didn't happen. It is a community that accepted useful tools without accepting the ideology that usually comes bundled with them. And that distinction is what most people miss. Because the modern world does not just offer machines and services, it offers assumptions. That land should be privately owned and freely traded. That growth is the natural goal of any economy. That bigger is better. That openness to outside ownership is always a virtue. That personal mobility matters more than communal stability. That anonymity is freedom. That independence means not needing anyone. That convenience is the highest measure of a good life. Tristan rejected those assumptions, not the tools, the assumptions. And in doing so, it preserved something that most places on Earth have already surrendered: a social order based on mutual dependence rather than individual accumulation. NPR's recent reporting on Tristan reinforces how unusual this remains. The feature describes how just 221 people live in one settlement, relying largely on themselves and each other to keep life running. The limited labor pool means skills are shared and tasks stretched across families. People cover each other's shifts, run each other's errands, fill each other's roles. It calls the island a rugged Scottish highland dropped into the middle of the South Atlantic. Not a tropical paradise, but a place of fierce winds, potato fields, and constant activity. That description matters, because it destroys the fantasy that this is an easy life, freely chosen by people with better options nearby. It isn't. This is a hard life. Hard weather, hard logistics, hard closeness, hard work, hard limits. And still, the community chose it. Chose it once when they settled. Chose it again when they returned after eruption. Choose it still, every day, by remaining. National Geographic's Andrew Evans captures the same truth from the ocean. He describes getting to Tristan as a feat: 12 days of travel, a week of rough seas, attempts to land that sometimes fail entirely. He writes of a lone volcano more than 1,500 miles in every direction from the next bit of land. A village of a few hundred people surviving in the midst of 3,000 miles of open ocean. Total self-sufficiency, he says, is a way of life. 3,000 miles of open ocean, and still they stayed. Now imagine what that refusal looks like from the inside. Not as a grand gesture, not as a political statement, as a Tuesday. Someone wakes early, checks the weather, feeds livestock, walks to work, passes the same houses, greets the same neighbors, arrives at a government office, or the school, or the harbor, or the fishing operation, does a job that matters to everyone because there are so few people that every job matters, comes home, tends a potato patch, repairs something, helps someone, eats food that is local, practical, and connected to labor, sleeps inside a house built by family, and repeats it, not because there is nothing else, because this is what they chose. That rhythm is the refusal, not a locked gate, not a wall, not a declaration, a rhythm, a way of organizing time, labor, food, shelter, education, community, and meaning that does not require the modern world's approval to continue. Of course, that refusal is under pressure now. It always has been. But the pressures are changing. The internet arrives where ships once brought only letters. Education opens doors that geography once held shut. Young people can imagine lives that older generations could not have pictured. The school prepares children well, and preparation, by definition, widens their options beyond this one settlement. So the community that said no to the modern world now faces a subtler version of the same question. Can it keep saying no selectively? Can it accept useful technology without accepting the ideology of unlimited growth? Can it educate children without losing them? Can it allow connection without dissolving into the connected world? Can it remain small without becoming too small to sustain itself? Those are not easy questions, and the answers may not be permanent. But the fact that the questions are still being asked on one volcanic island in one tiny settlement by one community of just over 200 people is itself a kind of answer. Because most places stopped asking long ago. Most places said yes. Yes to outside ownership. Yes to unlimited access. Yes to growth as the default. Yes to convenience over continuity. Yes to openness over coherence. And many of those places are richer now, bigger, more connected, more comfortable, but also more anonymous, more unequal, more fragile in ways that wealth cannot easily fix, more dependent on systems so large that no single community controls them. Tristan is not richer. It is not bigger. It is not more comfortable. But it still belongs to itself. The land belongs to the community. The economy is shaped by local need. The population is small enough that every person still matters in full scale. The houses are built by the people who live in them. The food is connected to the ground under their feet and the sea in front of their eyes. The surnames still echo the original settlers. The children still walk to school beneath the same cliffs. And the community still reserves the right to say, no, you cannot simply arrive and reshape this place according to outside desires. That is not backwardness. That is not fear. That is a different answer to the question of how human beings should organize their lives. And in a century that worships openness, scale, mobility, and growth, there is something almost revolutionary in that small word the island keeps repeating. No. No, you cannot buy our land. No, you cannot settle here without permission. No, we will not abandon communal ownership for private markets. No, we will not treat our village as a product. No, we will not pretend that bigger is automatically better. No, we will not trade our coherence for your convenience. We tried your world once. We lived in your cities. We worked in your systems. We saw your shops and your roads and your hospitals and your schools. And we voted 148-5 to come home. That vote still echoes, in the harbor where cargo arrives by raft, in the potato patches where families still dig, in the school where a few dozen children learn, in the hall where decisions are made together, in the cliffs that stand behind everything, in the ocean that stands before it, and in the quiet daily life of a village that somehow, after 2 centuries, still belongs to the people who live there. That is what saying no to the modern world actually looks like. Not a fortress, not a wall, not a closed border, a life, repeated, chosen, maintained, by people who understand something the rest of the world is still learning, that the hardest thing is not refusing the modern world once. It is refusing it every day, while it stands on the horizon, offering everything, and you stand on the shore, holding what you already have, and deciding, again, that what you have is enough.